We're also joined by John Norquist, colleague and friend, President and CEO of the Congress for the New Urbanism, based in Chicago. CNU is a leading organization promoting walkable, neighborhood-based development as an alternative to sprawl. Norquist served as a mayor of Milwaukee from 1988 to 2004. He received widespread recognition, as Rob said, for championing the removal of a mile-long stretch of elevated freeway, clearing the way for an estimated $250 million in development in the heart of the city. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bob Jorth, John Norquist, and Rob Simpson.
Thank you very much, Buzz. It's good to see you again after, when he was president of the University of Wisconsin system, I was on the finance committee in the legislature, and I enjoyed torturing him. No, actually, we had a good relationship. I'm here today to talk to you about something that's completely counterintuitive. Earlier in the 20th century, right after the war, about 10 years, 15 years after the war, you built I-81 right through the middle of Syracuse, which at the time seemed like a good idea to some people, but is it something that wasn't done in European cities and not done in a lot of Canadian cities as well, building grade-separated highways, which are a rural form, into the middle of an urban, the fabric of a city. And now it would seem counterintuitive to take it out because you have a lot of traffic and what would happen to it. Well, I'm going to try to explain how that actually works. If the person, there you go. But before I do that, I just wanted to point out, where did the idea come from for grade-separated highways in big cities? Was it something that came out of Milton Friedman's free market playbook? Not really. It came from a guy named Le Corbusier, the leader of the modernist movement, and at the end of World War I in 1922, he came up with the idea of the city of tomorrow with the grade-separated street running through the city, getting all the life of the city out of the way of vehicles. And his ideas were rejected in Europe, but adopted in the United States. And you can see right here, Crystal City, Virginia, right outside Reagan Airport in DC. The Jefferson Davis Highway is the exact creation of what Corbusier had in mind. He was a socialist for much of his life. And so the idea for these roads really came from somebody who was not part of the Ottumwa, Iowa Chamber of Commerce or any other kind of Oklahoma or anything like that, but rather a very sophisticated modern designer. It had impacts in the United States, and I just want to show you the most extreme impact. This is, well, first just guess in your own mind what city this is. It's Woodward Avenue in Detroit, the main street in Detroit. In this picture in 1946, it has 3 department stores on the street, Kearns, Crowley's, and Hudson's, which was second only to Macy's in size in the United States, with streetcars and lively downtown with sidewalks packed with pedestrians. And then about 10 years later, the streetcars were gone and they started building the freeways through the cities, solving their problems with traffic congestion. Now this is Berlin in 1945, in May, right at the end of the war. About 70% of the buildings were either destroyed or damaged so badly they had to be razed. And this is Berlin now. This is Potsdamer Platz, which was empty in 1989. When the wall came down, Potsdamer Platz was built back up. It had been the biggest intersection in Berlin before the war, and it is now again. It's all rebuilt. In fact, if you visit Berlin, you'll find that there's almost no war damage whatsoever except where they deliberately kept it as a historic site. This is Detroit, a picture taken about 3 years ago. About 30% of the building sites that had buildings on them at the end of the war are now empty. And here's a ground level view and another one with pheasant. During World War II, Detroit was the most successful city in the world at producing war material, the most productive city. And Berlin was the capital of Germany, and Germany lost World War II. But if you didn't know anything about history and you looked at Detroit today, and you look at Berlin, you'd think that the epicenter of the world's most destructive war was maybe in Detroit. But Detroit has solved one problem, and it was the reason why they built all the roads in the first place, was to solve congestion. They don't have traffic congestion in Detroit. They solved the problem. They built all the roads, they ripped out their streetcars, they tore out the transit, they tore down a lot of the city to create parking and so forth. They accommodated Detroit to the automobile. And you could say, well, it's an auto city, what do you expect? Well, Torino, Italy's an auto city, and it's beautiful. And Wolfsburg, Germany's an auto city, and it's beautiful too. This is Milwaukee, and this is the project that we were talking about, the Park East Freeway. It was built in 1970. Gradually, the buildings around it fell down and were removed, and parking lots were put in place, including one right next to the river, so that your car could park there throughout the day and gaze over the river. And now it's being built up. The freeway's replaced with surface streets. The travel times are better. People that actually want to move around the city, the distribution of traffic is more efficient, and development is happening. And Milwaukee's population is growing, even though it's landlocked. It's 91 square miles, just like it was 40 years ago. But the most dramatic example of what can happen is in Seoul, Korea. After the Korean War, the United States helped the South Koreans build this freeway right through the middle of Seoul, over a river, covered up a river. You didn't have to pay damages to property owners with the river. It was already owned by the government. So they covered up the river. In 2003, they took it out and replaced it with no freeway whatsoever, just 2 surface streets on each side of the river, and billions of dollars of property value. And the traffic distribution is better. It carried 150,000 cars a day through that corridor, and the traffic distribution works just fine without the road. A lot of the traffic disappears, goes other places, or uses other things. This is the mayor, Myung-Bak Lee, the mayor at the time who made the decision to do it, and he's sitting in the river on a rock, and he's very happy. See how happy he is? That's what happens when you do the right thing, when you do something courageous, and you turn everything around and make it better. Not only that, he was elected president of South Korea. He's probably not as happy now, but he's happy, you know, he's really proud of what he did, and it really had a huge impact on Seoul. And now Jakarta, Indonesia, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and some of the cities in China are all studying this to change it. And in the U.S., the Embarcadero Freeway in San Francisco, the Central Artery, the West Side Highway in New York back in 20 years ago, and et cetera. There's all kinds of examples of this sort of thing happening. But anyway, he's very proud, he's very happy, and that's what happens when you do something courageous. Now, on the other hand, if you aren't courageous, you become unhappy. You can see an example here with Musharraf, who ended office very unhappy. Okay, so Syracuse has a choice. Syracuse can listen to advice from people that worry just about traffic counts and don't understand the purpose of urban streets is not just movement of vehicles, but the economic development along streets and also the social interaction that comes from a good urban street. You can follow Detroit's example, or you could follow, say, San Francisco's example. It's up to you. I recommend that you try to focus on things that add value to the city. That's the key to understanding this issue. What adds value? What makes Syracuse more valuable? Because having giant facilities that have great traffic capacity may help Syracuse become a really great truck stop someday, but not much more. And you have a choice. You should open your minds to this option. It's counterintuitive, but think about it. And if you make the right decision, I think you won't regret it. You'll really love it. Thank you very much.